When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be hard. Like early 90s heavy metal hard.
I'm yelling and screaming and I'm loud. Roar!
Geico makes it easy. You can review and update your policy or report a claim on Geico.com or the Geico mobile app. Because shouldn't we all have a little less stress in our lives?
I'm not even upset about anything!
Blog Talk Radio. Writing your book is the easy part. Promoting your book so readers can find and purchase it is the hard part. Welcome to the Author Chat Show, hosted by author-publisher Lynda D. Brown. Follow us at www.facebook.com/authorchat. And to contact the show to promote your book, contact me at theauthorchatshow@gmail.com. Stay tuned and listen to today's show.
Good morning, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Author Chat Show. I'm your host, Lynda D. Brown. My guest today is author Lee Wellings. Lee is stopping by the show to discuss his book, The Actor, a thriller and love story at the height of the Cold War. This is Lee's first appearance on the Author Chat Show, and we'll be right back to chat with him about his book after a word from today's sponsor.
PrimeStar Publicity and Public Relations is a full-service firm ready to fill the needs of their clients. Owner Helen Cook has more than 32 years of publicity, public relations, advertising, and marketing experience, and she focuses her professional talents on working with her clients' strengths to create customized, strategic campaigns, whether their needs are great or small. Radio, TV, print, internet, publicity, marketing, creating a social media presence, branding, client positioning, author tours, speaking events. These are just some of the services PrimeStar provides for their clients. For a complete list of services and other information about the company, please visit our website, www.primestarpublicity.com, or email Helen at helen.cook@primestarpublicity.com, or phone 903-654-0938. PrimeStar's home office is located in the Houston, Texas area.
All right, welcome back to the show. For those of you just tuning in, my guest today is author Lee Wellings. Lee is stopping by the Author Chat Show to discuss his new book, The Actor, a thriller and love story at the height of the Cold War. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lynda. I look forward to chatting with you this morning.
Well, we look forward to getting into this book. This seems so interesting. Lee, I love the title. I love the concept of the book. Before we get into the book, let's start by, since this is your first time on the show, let's get started with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Terrific. Well, I am 74 years old, and I started my writing career about 2.5 years ago. In the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, I was actively working in the Broadway theater in New York. I was a Broadway stage manager. I also went on to handle the marketing and group sales for more than 350 shows on Broadway, working on staffs of all the major producers. I then went into travel, and all this experience has given me the opportunity to write a book that captures the Broadway of the 1950s, 60s, and which was called the golden age of the Broadway musical. So that's basically my background and how I was able to put this book together.
Okay, so working in this industry kind of gave you the idea of putting a book together like this. How did you come up with this amazing story?
Well, first of all, I had worked, as I mentioned, with many Broadway producers, and my job was to read scripts and read stories, and I read many of them. And basically, I finally, when I was a little older and I think a little more mature, I was able to put down a story which is a thriller and a love story set and a story telling about this major Broadway star who is invited by the CIA to run a tour to Russia, and that's where all the excitement and thriller begins. So I just came up with it. I really can't answer it any more than that. I wrote an outline and just went through it for a year and a half.
And that is the sign of a wonderful writer. That's exactly how the process goes. I was just telling a friend last night, it starts with a thought. Then you put pen to paper, flesh it out, and wow, now you have a story. What an amazing story. So tell us about your book, The Acting.
Okay, well, I just wanted to finish up one thought that you had mentioned. What would happen is I would write, day after day, but I spent many times awaking at 4 a.m. and say, oh, my God, that's what I'm going to do with the character, and this is where it's going to go. So I did a lot of my writing in the early morning hours. But let me tell you about the book. I will quickly just read a little synopsis about the book, if I may.
Sure.
George Toomey is a successful Broadway actor. His life is one of celebrity, leading ladies, and dinners at Sardis. At home in his 12-room penthouse with a view, he has a beautiful wife and 2 daughters. One day in 1959, everything changes for George. He's approached by the CIA to enter the U.S.S.R. during the Cold War as an entertainer in a cultural exchange tour. The job is simple: handle messages and documents given to him and, of course, give a stellar performance that will make Russian audiences fall in love with him. Behind the Iron Curtain, however, the job gets more complicated than George or his handlers could ever have imagined. And lives, secrets, and countries are put on the line. What unfolds is a fast-paced thriller filled with danger, mystery, and state secrets. Will the United States and the CIA back George up when the mission goes wrong? Will George escape from the KGB agents who have made up their mind and their sworn mission to kill him? The spy game is one that George isn't prepared for. We will learn how to play in time to save his life. George's story is a metaphor for resilience to which everyone can relate.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating about your book, Lee, again, I'm a movie buff from years because we're not that far in age. And yes. I believe back in exactly World War I and II, especially II, that they actually did have the CIA actually had agents as spies in certain areas wherever they went to tour. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. In fact, this story is very timely now, even though it's set in the 50s and 60s. With our new relationship with Cuba and Russia, it's timely. It's even timely in the media with movies and films and television shows about the Cold War.
Exactly. So, George, I'm sorry, Lee, I'm calling you by your character's name, which I guess is a good sign. Yeah. Tell us how you're promoting your book, how you're getting the word out about your book.
Well, it started from the beginning. I wanted to treat this as a business. I've run business and knew that every step along the way has to be treated like a business. Right now, I won't go over the journey unless you want to, but to answer your question, the book at this moment, the pre-launch is happening as we speak with the official launch in October. I've hired a publicity agent. I'm going to be lecturing. I'm going to be using social media. I'm even going to advertise in some media that goes to the Hollywood decision makers because, as you just said, this is a timely matter, and there are many, many books that have gone on from self-publishing authors to be very successful.
Exactly, and that is one of the reasons why we started this show, so we can help you guys get the word out about your books. Because as we know, if you look at what's going on in Hollywood, they're doing all these remakes. I think they're running out of ideas for new, fresh content. And this would be a fabulous book that would be turned into a movie. And so it's a good thing that you did find a publicist to help you get the word out about your book. Because, again, I think this is absolutely amazing. It seems like I haven't had a chance to read the book, but just reading some of the information that your publicist sent me about the book. Because one of the things I like to talk about now, you told us about the character George, not giving too much away. Tell us about the character Ingrid. She seems fascinating.
Well, there is a lot of development of the character. At first, George is a difficult man and very self-centered, and maybe doesn't know what love is all about. But this trip to Europe and to Russia, he loses his career, his wife, his family, and finally he meets Ingrid, who, because he's hiding on a cruise ship to escape from the KGB, and Ingrid is the love of his life now. And I delve into a love story here, which I hope the readers will enjoy, because George changed from someone who didn't care to someone who does care. So Ingrid is a very important character in the story, and I won't tell you how it ends, but she is, when introduced, very important.
Wonderful. Now, you mentioned earlier that a lot of your writing took place early mornings. How long did it take you to really flesh out all of your characters?
Well, the first step was when it took about a year and a half. When I was finished with the first manuscript, what I decided to do, since I didn't know anything about whether this was good or not, I went to an association in New York, I believe it is, or all over the country, of editors. This is editors who are professional freelance editors. I didn't want them to edit the book. What I wanted was that for the three of them to read the book. I hired three. I paid them their fee, not to edit, but to read and give me a critique. And all three of them came back and said to me, "You got one hell of a story, but you didn't write it well." So at that point, I knew I wanted to go on, and I hired a writing coach / editor, and she and myself worked through the character development of all the characters. So for the next year and a half, it was pretty much working with someone who pushed me to make sure that these characters were real, that they spoke, and that's how I did it, with some help.
Now, I know you mentioned in your job as a basically like a manager on Broadway.
Yeah.
Would that be the correct title?
Well, as stage manager, there were two parts to my history in theater. One was a Broadway stage manager, and the stage manager for a Broadway musical and shows runs the show after the director has directed it and opening night opens, and he runs the show. From there, I went into the business end of the theater, where I worked with all the major producers in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, running a sales and marketing program to sell Broadway shows to the public. So I felt that I had a natural knack to be able, if I can sell a Broadway show, I should be able to sell a book of mine. So that's how that all happened.
Exactly. And so in that capacity, you mentioned earlier that you used to read some of the scripts. Is that correct? For some of the plays coming on Broadway. Did that, reading the scripts, did that actually help you with character dialogue in your book?
Well, I think so. I mean, I read good stuff, bad stuff, and doing so much, I thought the producers would ask me, what did I think of the book? Would it make a good show, and could it be sold? And I would try to tell them my opinion. Of course, nobody really knows what makes a hit on Broadway, but that was my job. So when I wrote this book, and by the way, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, this is the first book of a trilogy. So I'm already on the second book. So I think all of that experience worked and helped me.
Exactly. Now, Lee, because I think, again, this is a wonderful book. Have you thought about maybe, since you have such an extensive background in the theater, maybe doing a stage play with this book?
Did you say a play?
Stage play. Yeah, absolutely. We're taking on Broadway.
Well, first of all, I believe, because maybe it sounds self-serving, but I think this book has legs beyond a book, a film, a television movie. I'm not sure if it has legs for a Broadway piece. I will say this, from my experience, one of the biggest names in the Broadway theater is reading the book now. I don't personally think it has the legs for a play, but I definitely think it has the legs for a film or a television movie, and I'm only hoping that with my marketing and my advertising that the people who make decisions on product and content will find my little book. And by the way, it is self-published, and there have been many books that have been very successful that went on as a little self-publishing operation and were found by Hollywood, and then went on to be very successful movies like Still Alice, and 50 Shades of Grey, and there are many books, The Martian, and that's what I hope will happen. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but that's my plan, I hope.
Exactly. Well, you know what? I think it's really important to kind of get that out there in the universe, as we say. You know, just to, hey, it's a lot of people that are actually looking at this. My guest that was scheduled to be on the show yesterday, he wrote a really great book, and guess what? They're actually turning it into a film, and that's one of the reasons he was a bit busy, so we're going to have to reschedule him. But, yeah, his publicist, when she sent me the information, the first thing she said is, this book has been turned into a movie. So the possibilities are out there. It's just really great. Now, you said basically, because I showed that the book came out, because it is available on Kindle. It came out in July. Have you had a chance to, believe it or not, even with the e-book, you can actually do book signings. Have you had a chance to get the book out there, maybe with your local library?
Yes, that's going to be, as I say, although it was published, the date is the end of July, we've just started our pre-planning and marketing, and absolutely we plan to do book signings. We also hope to attack the librarians to see if they will let us come into their libraries and get the book on tables. So, yes, the answer is we are planning book signings.
Awesome. Did you get a chance, because for every author that comes on this show, they also get copies of our the Author Chat guide to ebooks for authors. Did you get a copy of my book, Ebooks for Authors,
Not yet.
Lee? Because okay, great. There's a great book in there. Hit Amazon's bestsellers list on how to partner with your library. My background, I actually came from the library, and when I started writing and publishing my books, also self-published, I started doing programs at the library. That is an excellent way to get your book into the library by going to them and proposing to do some type of a program for authors or for writers. It's a great way because they're always looking for programs at your local library. A lot of people are not aware of that. So that's really, really a great way to get your book out there. I am
looking forward to doing it.
Awesome. Now, I see that, like you mentioned, right now the book is available on Amazon in the Kindle edition for $3.99. Or are you going to expand that into a paperback book or possibly an audio book?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, if anyone were to go on our website, which is theactor.biz, B-I-Z, it's all available now. You can buy paperback, you can buy a hard copy, you can buy Kindle, Nook, and yes, we are going to make it available to audiobooks, but not in the first step. Our first goal, being a self-published author, there's pros and cons, and one of the cons is we have to pay for everything. So the next step will be, if there's a demand, audiobooks, and people can buy that. Not yet, but that's in our planning.
Exactly. Well, one of the books that that's in that package for authors that come on the show is How to Convert Your Book into an Audiobook. So you've got all the resources there to help you with that, Lee, because, again, I think this is an absolutely fabulous book. Now, tell us about the book cover. I love your book cover. Who helped you with the book cover, with the graphics with your cover?
I am very pleased with that cover. I don't want to be self-serving, but the bottom line is I knew from the beginning what I wanted. I wanted the mask of comedy and tragedy and those flags in the mouth or coming out of the mouth. So when I finally decided on a self-publishing operation, and that's something that I'm very excited about, and I can tell you a little later about what I went through with the traditional way, but I hired an artist to give me exactly what I wanted, and he did beyond what I expected, and that cover is something I'm very proud of.
You should be. It is absolutely fabulous. One thing that we, again, talk about on the show is how your book cover has to stand out, and yours definitely stand out. I love the fact that you have the two masks with the Russian speak out of one and the U.S. flag speak out of the other. That is just absolutely fabulous.
There's an interesting story about that.
Okay.
There's an interesting story. When the author showed it to me, I noticed, and I don't know if you picked it up, but the Russian mask is smiling, and the U.S. mask is frowning. Well, at first I didn't like it, but then I realized, wait a minute, when you read the book, the Americans should be frowning until the book turns around. So it's it's a perfect look, because at first the Russians are very happy with what they did, but the Americans eventually will be. So at this point, that cover has a little side story.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you were going to tell us about, because, again, most of our listening audience are authors, many first-time authors. So I'd love for you guys to talk about the experiences that you had, not only coming up with your book, but trying to, submit the book to a traditional publisher. So you tried to do that. What happened with that situation?
Well, I'm a big, big believer in self-publishing, and let me just share with you a little bit about my experience. First of all, with my background in theater and television, etc., I do know agents, literary agents, and I was under the impression, and even my age says, it's the traditional. You have to get a literary agent, and then they're the only ones who can get you into a publisher. So that's the way I started. And after I don't know how many 50, 80 rejections, I said, wait a minute, there must be something else. And let me tell you something. The rejections, I believe, were not because my book was good or bad. The rejections were that most literary agents, and I probably think all, do not want to take a chance on a first-time author and do not want to spend the time with a first-time novel. So that's when I learned about self-publishing. But it's very important that you get the right one, because there's some that aren't so good out there. And now I'm a believer, because it is not a stigma to be a self-published author, and authors are not second-class citizens. And if you look at my book, it has the look of a book that could have been published by the biggest publisher in the country. We hope people like the story, because without a good story, nothing's going to happen. But I'm very pleased with the story. So I researched it, and I found a self-publisher that I trusted, and he made this experience wonderful. And I'm thrilled about it. And nobody should be afraid of being a self-published author, but you must take the time to check these people out, because I had some bad experience and found out in the 11th hour some of them weren't going to do what they say they're going to do.
Exactly.
So it was a good experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. A lot of the authors, Lee, that have come on the show, and I know this to be true because I've been in this business now for 6 years, since 2010, and I've met a couple of people that are still in the traditional publishing field. And basically, like you mentioned, they don't want to spend money on new talent because they're not really sure how well received your book is going to be. So what they basically tell you to do is exactly what you're doing. You're getting your book out there. You're using social media. You're doing the radio interviews. You're just doing everything that you need to be. Once you actually get a following, that's when they want you to come back and say, hey, I sold this many books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, wherever you're posting your books. And really, you should try to make sure your books are distributed in each and every one of those venues because they're all fantastic. And then you tell them, I have a following. They look at your social media following. They look at the reviews for your book. That's why it's so important when someone reads your book that you ask them to leave a review on Amazon because they look at that. This is how you're going to get published by a traditional author, not this day and age, because self-publishing has really kind of taken over the publishing industry.
Yes,
and I'm going to be real honest. Yes, and Lee, I actually met with a young lady, a lady that came into the library, was also she came from New York. She moved back to the area that I'm in now, but she still, worked in the literary field. So she found out what I was doing because she came to some of my programs at the library. So she, long story short, she introduced me to one of her publishing friends, and the lady came down. They had the publishing convention here, and I'm in the St. Louis, Missouri area. And so she set it up so that we can get together for lunch. When I told the woman about the success I was having with my book, just getting out there, putting it out there on social media, my books came out in 2010. I'm still getting royalties on it. Her whole attitude changed. She got very hostile. And she said, you guys are basically taking over the industry, and I don't think this is going to be a good thing for publishing. Well, that was, 4 years ago, and we're still rolling. So you did the right thing by not getting discouraged with the traditional publisher and taking the initiative to get out here and publish this book yourself, because I think this is just an amazing book. And I really hope and pray, Lee, that the right person is listening to this show and that you get an opportunity to have this book turned into the movie. And if you do, make sure you let me know, because you would have been the third author that I've interviewed whose books have been turned into movies. That's just how important it is to get your information out here using these podcasts. This is how you build your audience.
Well, I want to just mention one more thing when you talked about marketing the book of something that I did which I didn't really mention. I put together a focus group of about 20 people. This focus group were people that might like the book because they live in the world that I write about. So I had people read the book from the theater community, from the travel community. I will tell you the Cape Cod community, because he hides on Cape Cod. They all read it, and I had 18 rave reviews. They couldn't put it down, and all those reviews that you told me to do will be on my website within the next couple of weeks, as well as I'm asking those people to post it on Amazon.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is amazing. Now, believe it or not, we're down to about our last 3 minutes. So, George, Lee, wow. See how good you're writing? You're writing it? I keep calling you by your character. Lee, tell us, you said that this is book 1 in a trilogy. You've already started on book 2. Can you give us some little tidbits about what's going to happen in book 2?
Well, it's called Part 2, but it's the prequel. And what I'm doing is I'm going back, as you refer to me as George. George is the protagonist. And the first book goes from 39 years old, when he's the biggest star on Broadway, to 59. This is going to go from George at 18 and for the next 20 years, when he first goes to New York to get into the theater and all the trouble he gets in. And I've written the first 10 chapters already, and eventually it shall be finished, I hope, by the end of 2017. So I'm all set with the second one.
Okay, great. And so please let us know when book 2 comes out so we can help you promote that as well. And one thing that just kind of came to my mind, Lee, since you have such a great connection with Broadway, if you could get one or two very popular, well-known Broadway actors or actresses to endorse your book, honey, you're going to be there. You're going to be right where you need to be. So it's just really making sure that you get absolutely getting that book in the right hands. But your idea too with the focus group is a fabulous idea, and I can't wait to really promote this interview because I think that a lot of authors, they don't really take the time. But like you said, you have a business background, so you realize coming in that this is going to be a business venture along with a creative venture. So that's great that you were able to merge the two together. But, honey, if you can get the right person, very, very popular, well-known, actually, to promote your book, to endorse your book, have them endorse it on the jacket of the next book. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to get your book out there.
And as the book takes off, I hope to get endorsements from theater people. And one other thing that I thought of that I just want to throw in is that not only am I marketing myself, but I am going to be involved with 10 or 11 of the top bloggers who write about thrillers for them to review it and hope that they like it. That's
there
what's
you
done
go.
Yet. Will be done
there you go.
Next month.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. Lee, believe it or not, this is the end of our interview today, but you, wonderful guest, very prepared. I thank you so much for coming on the show. And for those that are listening, again, the title of the book is called The Actor, with a question mark, A Thriller and Love Story at the Height of the Cold War. The author, again, is Lee, L-E-E, Wellings, W-E-L-L-I-N-G-S. And as I mentioned, currently the book is available on Kindle on Amazon for $3.99, Barnes & Noble. I did, while we were doing the interview, Lee, I went to your website, theactor.biz, and I posted some information on my social media so they can go right to your website if they want the book in a different format. But
terrific.
You know, I think you're going to do great with this book, and we wish you all the best.
And I promise you, if it's made into a film, you'll be the first person I call to be interviewed.
Sounds good, and that's on the house.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much.
Well, listen, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, Lee. Bye-bye.
Terrific. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, that was Arthur Lee Wellings, again, the author of the book, The Actor, A Thriller and Love Story at the Height of the Cold War. I highly recommend that my listening audience go over to Amazon, or you can go to his website, theactor.biz, and take a look at this book. The cover is fabulous. They did a wonderful job with the cover. It's very outstanding. It will definitely stand out on the Amazon shelf if you go to Amazon.com. Once he gets it into his local library, these are the things that you have to do. You heard him talk about his marketing plan before the book even because the book just came out at the end of July. So now he's doing everything that he's supposed to be doing to market his book. So kudos to you, Lee Wellings. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing that information with us. Well, that's our show for today. We thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you back here this weekend on the Arthur Chat Show. Enjoy your Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Sarah figured out that by switching to Metro PCS, she gets 2 free smartphones.
Your barbecue ribs are the best.
Take the rest home with you, Sarah.
Just like she figured out that by visiting her in-laws, she doesn't have to cook for the rest of the week. You too figure it out. Get 2 free 4G LTE smartphones from top brands like Samsung and LG after instant rebate when you switch. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figure it out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included. See store or metropcs.com for details and terms and conditions. Sarah figured out that by switching to Metro PCS, she gets 2 free smartphones.
Your barbecue ribs are the best.
Take the rest home with you, Sarah.
Just like she figured out that by visiting her in-laws, she doesn't have to cook for the rest of the week. You too figure it out. Get 2 free 4G LTE smartphones from top brands like Samsung and LG after instant rebate when you switch. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figure it out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included. See store or metropcs.com for details and terms and conditions.